Well, good morning. I'm really glad to be back here today, especially today. Good morning. So I named this talk this morning Mother and Child. And it's interesting to think about both were important. A lot of times we think about the baby, but the mother was very important in this whole story too. So Christmas is a time of wonder and spiritual awareness. On this Christmas Eve, we find ourselves with the story of old, where Joseph and Mary await the birth of the child. Who is Mary? There's not much in the Bible about Mary, just a few things, which is kind of common for the women of that time. It doesn't tell us much, but in Luke chapter 1, 26 through 38, the angel Gabriel comes to Mary in Nazareth to tell Mary that she is highly favored and that she will have a son who will be called the Son of the Most High. And he tells her to name him Jesus. The angel told Mary not to be afraid and gave her details on how this thing would happen. Mary accepted the words of Gabriel and responded with, "May your words to me be fulfilled." And she was able to just trust and accept her role. Now, I didn't write this in, but the other little story that's already been going on is that Zechariah and Elizabeth, who's her cousin, are having a baby as well. And Zechariah couldn't just accept it and trust it, so he got his voice taken away till the baby was born. He couldn't talk or say anything, so he was much more questioning. Mary was able to accept it and just go with that. So Mary was from an honored shame society. And decisions are made in families by the one in charge, and the family follows that decision. There's not a whole lot of individualism in this culture. You just kind of go with what you're told, and if you don't, you're bringing shame on yourself and the family. And so it was kind of a way to run the show without a whole lot of choices. And we still have some of this honor shame in the world today in many places. The Hebrew culture was not individualistic like ours is. A woman's choices were very limited. For Mary to be told that she would have a child as an unwed mother was a huge thing to deal with. I mean, this could be a really awful life experience for her, and it could, color the rest of her life. It could bring her shame in her community and family. Yet Mary accepted the task and whatever experience came with it without questioning. Well, how did she come to be, at about 16 years old, how did she come to be able to be so open to this? My mother was named Mary too. I was born when she was 16 years old. She came from a family who were devout Southern Baptists. There was a lot of kind of shame stuff going there. My mother never shared that she was unwed and pregnant with me, though my cousin had told me. She didn't get to finish high school, even though she was a good student and her family had high expectations for her. It changed her life. I remember when I was 26 years old, I was standing and talking to my grandmother, my mom's mother, and we were talking about something, and she started to say, it broke our heart when Mary, and then she looked at me and realized who she was talking to and zipped it. She didn't say any more. But I just thought, I felt this anger arise in me, and this, I wanted to protect my mom. I thought, gosh, how long do you hold that against somebody, A lot of time had gone by. It seemed like forgiveness could happen and that she could be let go of that shame that she'd been carrying. Mary of Nazareth was facing a big event in her life. Her response would be to ponder the things she was told in her heart. She didn't get caught in overthinking it and intellectualizing things and getting caught up in all the fears. She went to her heart with it and just let it engage her heart, which also meant she was coming from love, and she was able to go there without really thinking about it. Charles Fillmore wrote in his Metaphysical Bible that Mary, the mother of Jesus, represented the soul that magnifies the Lord daily in the temple, and through its devotion prepares itself for the higher life. He said that the soul is the feminine. She signifies the divine motherhood of love. She expresses intuition, love, and nurturing. These are the characteristics that are usually considered less valuable in our society, and hers as well. In our culture, things that have to do with teaching and caring don't make as much money, don't have typically as much value by many. We don't read in the Bible where Mary came from, other than she is of the line of David. But it's told that Mary was dedicated at 4 years old to the sect called the Essenes, there was Pharisees and Sadducees, and Mary was dedicated to the Essenes, who lived away from town because they wanted to live a more spiritual life and they wanted to stay dedicated. And so that's what they did. They lived in a community, and Mary grew up with another group of girls there as well. And so over this time, she was learning how to be present and able to listen like Jesus did later in his life, always praying, always listening, and in contact with God. And so this was, it made me think when I was reading about this, about watching the movie about Martin Luther King Jr., and how during the Civil War, the Civil Rights Movement, they practiced. A group of people would come and practice because if they were going to go out into the public and they were going to have ugly responses, they practiced being yelled at and spit on without reacting. Because if they reacted, it would mess things up. So this time for Mary being with the Essenes was a way for her to practice letting things go into her heart. She was able to be present. She was aware of the spiritual teaching, and she was an intelligent spiritual woman. She would be the mother of the Messiah. In Luke, Mary said, "My soul glorifies the Lord, and my spirit rejoices in God." And she is the mother. Today is the eve of the celebration of the birth. So here we are with the mother as she awaits the birth. This is the time that Mary was in labor. The divine mother in humans is the mother phase of being, according to the Metaphysical Bible. Mary was said in Luke to ponder these things in her heart. She knew to go to love. She answered the announcement of the angel with love and the willingness to live her life following the guidance and letting her life be a vessel for the expression of God. And in this case, it wasn't just metaphorical. She actually wasn't the vessel for this new life coming in. I'm sure that it took courage as well as love to move through the days of expecting the baby. I remember when I found myself in an experience where I needed a loving heart and courage. One day in March, I was driving home from Vancouver, where I worked in a salon, and it was a time of just like a spiritual growth spurt for me, and I was just enjoying it so much. And the salon I worked in, people would come in and I would do their hair, and just have the most wonderful interactions and conversations. It was such a great connection. And the woman that owned the salon was so supportive. It was just wonderful. So I was just learning and growing, and had left the Southern Baptist teachings behind me and was really moving towards a more spiritual way of life. And I was driving home that evening in March, and it was just a really pretty day. And I was crossing the Glen Jackson Bridge over the Columbia River. And to my left was Mount Hood. It's a beautiful mountain, and you could see it. It was just beautiful, still covered with snow. And to my right was down the river. The sun was setting a little bit, coming down on the river, and a few spotted sailboats along there. And I just remember feeling so excited and so, just glad. And I just prayed out loud. I said, "God, I'm just so willing. I'm just willing to be willing." And boy, I meant it with all my heart. And I had been taking a class. I had just started taking a public speaking class. So I was at Mount Hood Community College, just east of Portland. So I was going out every week and doing that. About midway through that class, I found myself holding a positive pregnancy test while we were on a beach trip from my husband's birthday. And that was a shock. not expected. I was 38 years old. I had 4 children, ranging in age from 19, the oldest 2 were 19 and 18. The youngest 2 were 6 and 3 at the time. And I had a failing marriage. It was not what I expected. And all I could think of was, this cannot be the answer to that prayer. But there I was. And so over time, I just kept moving through it. And some of those conversations in that salon brought up things and, talked about tests and things like that. And I had decided not to do any tests, even though I was over 35. So December 4th was my birthday, and I was off that day. The house was decorated for Christmas, and I started to go into labor. The naturopath that the doctor I'd been working with was coming that evening. And so that long labor went for a couple of days. And by early in the morning of the 6th, December 6th, here comes this little boy. And December 6th is St. Nicholas Day. And so, of course, we were inspired to name him Nicholas. And so Nicholas is 26 now, and just turned 26 on the 6th of this month. And, at the time, it was such a shock to me. And it was so scary to think about what that meant, to have not only all the things, the responsibilities I had and the dreams I had for my life moving forward, but to start raising another child and all the things that go with it. And, truthfully, that night that he was born, the doctor held on to him for quite a while and just looked him over really well. And finally he brought him in and said, he's okay, we'll talk more later. And I kind of had the feeling that something was up, but I knew now wasn't the time to think about it. And I stood there in our room with the baby all wrapped in a blanket. I could just feel the presence and almost see that there was angels or beings of something in that room with me at the time. I knew it was just a special moment. And so I had 2 days of no diagnosis to fall completely in love with that little boy, even though it was a challenge to accept it. It was just 2 days of just total acceptance and love of him. And then we went and had the test done, and he was diagnosed with Down syndrome. And so at first that was a challenge. I was never attracted to anything with Down syndrome. It had never been something that spoke to me. And so now I had this child that I totally loved. So for me, that was a challenging a piece of my life that changed my life completely. So that started a whole new path for me. And at first it was so overwhelming. I didn't, it took a couple of days, but I was in such grief. I wrote in my journal, I couldn't take a breath without tears. It was just so overwhelming. And then my 7-year-old came up to me and said, "Mom, what's the matter? Why are you crying all the time?" To him, we had a new baby. What's the deal? So I picked up Nicholas because I thought I've got to be available to these kids too. I took him in the bedroom and I sat down and I said, "Okay, God, show me how to get my strength back." And I no sooner thought those words and I had the words coming into my right ear, "Well, something could have happened and Nicholas could have died." I gasped and I thought, "I'll take him just the way he is. Thank you very much." And from then on, there was no more sadness. There was no more fear. It was a quest to find out about Down syndrome and learn how to help this little guy be the best he could be. And he's had all kinds of wonderful stories that I can tell you more about later, but it's been a wonderful experience and he's been a gift and continues to be. He kind of amazes me. Well, the answer to my prayer did challenge me for sure, and yet it was the answer to a prayer that helped me grow and become more of who I was meant to be. And I just turned 65 this year, and I'm over halfway through a ministerial program, so I am fulfilling that dream as we speak here. So our choice is for partnership. If the divine feminine in humans is the mother phase of being, then God, through his Holy Spirit, is the father, according to Charles Fillmore. Masculine and feminine are a partnership. The patriarchy that has lasted for so long throughout most of the world is not serving us well anymore. We need to partner the feminine with the masculine. The structure and order of the masculine brings that the masculine brings can easily get out of balance without the qualities of nurturing care, intuition of the feminine. Tomorrow morning, we will celebrate the baby. For now, we wait with the mother. We can know the partnership of love in the world for all people, for all life. It's the partnership of masculine and feminine that brings balance in our world. All of this is of God. There is no separation. We speak of that all the time, that there is no separation. Everything is God. Our world doesn't need to be at war. No child needs to live in hunger or poverty or abuse. We can see with our own eyes these wrongs in the world today. This morning, mother and child both bring a story of the meaning of this very special time of Christmas. Mary fully participated in the birth of this child, who would come to be known as the Christ and as the light of the world. He would learn and grow, and he astonished many with his deep knowledge and understanding of the scriptures. He would teach and heal and remind us that the most important thing is love. He is a balance of masculine and feminine in himself. He would challenge the way of things. He would speak to women that weren't supposed to be spoken to. He included the women and he valued them. But for today, we are with the mother, awaiting her birth, awaiting the birth. The babe is coming to remind us that there is light. He brought the light. He told us that we were like him and that we would do even greater things than he was doing. We are each the light of the world. Let your light shine. Stand up with courage to shine love in a world that can be filled with light and love. Each one that stands up for peace and love lights the world. Our light joined with the light of others will grow, and the day will come that war will not even be considered an option. But for now, we're waiting with this mother who holds in her heart the possibility of the love and light that will get us there. So now, before we move away from this moment, I'd like to take just a few minutes for a little quiet meditation. So please just take a few moments and take a breath. Close your eyes if you want. And just ponder in your heart, if you will. Remember when you were a child, what brought you safety and security? Who gave you unconditional love? I hope it was your mother and your father. The Divine Mother is the mother phase of being. It is God expressing itself as the feminine. God, through his Holy Spirit, is the Father, and both are God. God is one, and we are all one with God. There's no separation. Only one God working through our experience as we remember that we are all the children, the beloved ones of God. Just hold this idea in your heart at this blessed time right here and right now as we take just a couple of moments of silence. And as you breathe in, let your heart prepare to celebrate. They have seen the star, and the light is here. Blessed be.